Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to this conversation that we're having today, focused on COVID and diabetes and returning to, I want you to see these, normal. My name is Cherie Shockley. I am the community manager for the Diatribe Foundation. And before we get started, I want to make sure that we thank our sponsors. So thank you so much to Novo Nordisk and Merck for making this happen. We are really excited about this conversation. And here we go. So, like I said, my name is Cherie Shockley, and I am so happy to be joined by Lisa from Houston, Taria from Indianapolis, and Scott Shockley, who lives in Noblesville, Indiana. He doesn't.
Hello.
So we are going to get started, but before we actually get started with introductions, we're going to do something different because oftentimes we focus on people or diabetes and not the people or not the person with diabetes. So I'm going to introduce Lisa first. Lisa is an amazing person. She loves to travel. She is an inspiring chef who likes to dibble and dabble in the kitchen. She is from Puerto Rico, so she likes a nice sunny weather, and now she is located in Houston, Texas. Hi, Lisa. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. So, the next person we are going to introduce is Taria. So I have actually been following Taria for many years on Instagram. And the funny thing is, we actually live in the same city, same area, and we've never met in person. So
Never.
we need to make sure we fix that.
Yes, we do.
So I would like to call Taria the Marie Kondo of diabetes. She used to own her own organizing business. She's a huge fan of Jay Z, the rapper, just in case some people may not know. And she is a licensed school counselor. And her youngest son has type 1 diabetes. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And then last but not least, I would like to welcome Scott. Scott is from many places. He is a veteran. He served 24 years in the military. He is a lover of cars, new and old. He's probably had over 30 cars since I've been knowing him. And on top of that, he is my husband of almost 18 years, and he also has type 2 diabetes. So, Scott, thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be here.
The first question I would like to ask, okay, it's not really a question, but if you could create a hashtag to describe 2020, what would that hashtag be? And I'll throw it to Lisa because you are laughing.
Let's see. I think the first one that came to mind is hashtag can we not do that again? Thank you.
Yes. Yes. I love it.
Ooh, we're done. We're done. We're good.
What about you, Taria?
So I have a favorite quote that I use for a lot of different things, situations in my life. And so one of my other favorite artists, Mary J. Blige, she has a line. So it would be hashtag laugh to keep from crying. That's kind of that's what I think about 2020.
That's why I laugh so much. Pretty much.
Yes.
It's hashtag leap.
So hashtag leap year.
Yeah,
Mm,
like as in leap that year and go directly to the next.
I like that.
Very nice.
Okay, so Taria, what was it like for you and your family last year with COVID and everything else happening in the world?
So at first it was crazy, like weird crazy. My husband and I, we watch the news every morning, so we were hearing the news about COVID and just thinking like, wow, like that's crazy. Um, and then as it started getting closer to affecting us here in America, and then closer to our state, our local, our community, and everything, I was thinking, oh my gosh, will I have to take my kids out of school? Because I never thought that schools were shut down. I thought I would just have to make that individual personal decision, and the school, they would probably think I was crazy. Um, so just going through that, once school shut down, I mean, everything just was so. All I can say is just weird and just you know, unfamiliar territory. But once we got through the initial shock, I think um, it actually ended up being like somewhat of a hidden blessing because we were able to slow down. We didn't have to have so many things on our calendar and our to-do list. At the time, my husband's job, he traveled for work. So, of course, that stopped. So, he was home. Um, so it was one of those hidden blessings, even though some days it was like, oh my gosh, we're like everybody's home. We're all here together. We're all driving each other nuts. Like the kids are eating all the food. If I have to go to the grocery store one more time, all of that. But it did end up being a hidden opportunity for us as a family to kind of slow down, spend a lot more time together than we've ever had in our lives. And then really just kind of appreciate things around us and things that we have that we were taking for granted. But we're a very social family, so we have missed our friends that we would do Sunday dinners together. We've missed our friends so much. So we've missed some things, but we've gained some things in 2020.
Definitely, I can definitely relate. Lisa, what about you? I know your family's in Puerto Rico and you're in Houston.
Yeah. It was a strange year for me here in Houston, right? Because part of being in Houston, I almost lost my job, right, because of all of the complications that came with COVID and some other worldly issues that were happening simultaneously, right? So first it was like figuring out, oh my God, I have to find toilet paper because I was running out. I had to
Yeah.
figure out how I was going to get food because I live alone, right? So how do you do that with all the things that are going on? What works, what doesn't. And then I had to job search, which was just when everything was shutting down, it was just the worst experience ever. And then in addition to that, right, my family is not here. So it was just strange to see the experience of not being able to really go there and help if needed, or I was planning on traveling to Puerto Rico and I had to cancel that. And it's just, thankfully, my parents were doing well. My brother was there and could help, but it was definitely a strain just because I like going there every so often, and it was and the news here and the news in Puerto Rico was different, and how things were approached were different. So it was just it was very surreal because it's like, what is happening? How do
Mm-hmm.
what are the rules of engagement at this point in time? So it was just, it was a very surreal year for sure.
And Scott, how about you?
Well, for me, originally, things didn't change much because of the nature of my job. We had to continue to go to work every day. Uh, the only thing for me is, and it may sound ridiculous, but I'm like, wow, this is great. The roads are empty. I don't have to deal with traffic. And uh, that's kind of how I looked at it at first. And, but then it started to wear on me. It's like, wait, I do have to go to work and nobody else is going to work. I'm being exposed to all these people and I don't have any protection from it. And so that's where the change was for me. For the first couple of weeks, I'm like, yeah, no traffic. I can go to work in 10 minutes. It used to take me 40. And then I went to, oh, wow, how come I have to go to work and everybody else is at home? I don't think my job about me that much. I don't think they care what happens to us. And, so then the stress started really ratcheting up after that. It's like, we don't even have masks here. And they just, they're like, don't worry about it. You'll be okay. And so
Wow.
a lot of stress through that first 6 or 7 months of trying to figure out like how we were going to operate at our job, try to protect the employees there, and then keep the doors open for what we did. So it was kind of nightmarish in a lot of ways because we were working a lot of times without the proper protective gear. So I went from yay no traffic to this isn't good. This isn't good at all. So
What I was gonna say, so it sounds like through it all, everybody's still standing, and which is a good thing.
Yes.
But what I would like to know is, starting with Taria, what was it like managing your son's diabetes with school changes, schedule changes? Can you kind of go through that process with us?
Yes. We actually, and I don't know if any other type 1 parents are like this, but I think that was another one of those hidden blessings or things that we didn't think about at first is like him being home. It was so much easier for us because we know diabetes. We have control. We know what certain things will do to him. So his schedule, like at school and the school nurse, like things can get really crazy at school. Schedules get off and all of that. So it made it a little bit easier for us because he's home with us. So we can control what he's eating, what he's doing, what he's not doing. We can give, sometimes I'm a little more reserved on how much insulin to give them at school because I don't want them to go low too fast, or their lunches at school are super carby and they go high. So it made it a little easier. It was interesting once we threw in the virtual learning. At first, teachers and parents, we're all just trying to figure it out. So um it was just like what, just trying to make it work. But when we did it at the beginning of this school year and it was more structured and they had to do more things and stay on longer, and so that was interesting and kind of weird because I had to like pop into the pop into the Zoom and here, take a snack, here's a juice, checking his blood sugar. And Trace is still kind of like, he knows he has diabetes and he knows what it entails, but he doesn't really know. And so he's just like looking at me like with like embarrassment on his face and things like that. So that was different because they had more structure at the beginning of this school year. Like they had login times and they had to sit there for hours at a time. So that was different, trying to manage that on Zoom so that he can still be interacting with his class and his teachers. But at the beginning, and obviously through the summer when school was out, it's so much easier to manage, at least for us. It's so much easier and less anxiety when he's home with us
Peace of mind.
than when he's at school. Yeah. Peace of mind. Exactly.
Definitely. Let's go to Scott. Scott?
in the beginning, my numbers went in the tank. They were probably as bad as they'd ever been. My A1C got up into the 9 range, which was pretty rough for me to handle. But, between going in every day and then not really knowing what was going on, and then like where I worked, I was the lead HR. So everybody was looking to me for answers, and I didn't have to give to them. Wasn't and like, when was this going to happen, and when was that going to happen, and my stress rose, and with that my blood sugars rose. So up until I made the decision to completely retire in November, which I'm very happy about, they were horrible. But now, since I made the decision to completely retire and trust my wife, my blood sugars have never been better. I have an A1C right now. I'm proud to report of 6.2, and my average time in range is like 96%. So those are the best numbers I've ever had in life, and that's getting rid of that stress and and listening to my wife too. That's made a big difference. I didn't listen to her before, like she thought she knew things about diabetes or something.
Okay, Lisa, I promise y'all that I'm really nice when it comes to his diabetes management. He does his thing, I do my thing. He has type 2 and I have LADA. So even though we kind of have the same regimen because he is on insulin, he's insulin dependent, there's some things that he's better at doing than I am. I wish I can follow my own advice. So Lisa, what about you? How was your diabetes management?
So I think stress, there was definitely, I had a few stress spikes for sure, especially going through that job search and all of that stuff, and going through an interview process, which is absolutely crazy. But I think I realized, right, that even if I was at the office, I was moving a ton more. And I think that was a huge change for me. I was like, starting to, I started gaining weight, and I was like, my blood sugar was obviously rising, and I was like, well, I hate this. I'm a perfectionist, and not perfectionist, but I'm like, I like to be at a certain place, right? That's my comfort level. So I sort of switched at how I approached the day, right? So I was walking maybe 10 steps between the kitchen and the office. So I actually took breakfast out, in the morning, and I actually avoided the morning spikes that I always tried to avoid. But I had coffee, right? So it's not like I wasn't having anything, or if I was actually super hungry, I would have something. But I was paying far more attention to seeing how my graphs and trajectories were going over the day, and then being like, it gave me a little bit more pause to analyze a few things. Which I think was a definite, at least it kept me stable, right? It didn't shoot me up. My A1C levels actually remained exactly the same, from before the pandemic started. But also part of it, I struggled with, like, in the beginning, there was this guilt of like, support the local restaurants, and I was ordering out all the time. And then I was like, maybe support them a little less. They'll still love you. And I did, I sort of had to make those trade-offs, because, I love food. So whatever food related, I will be there. But it's just, you start figuring out things that you like, what your new routine is, right? And, some days were better than others, but thankfully, I think that pause that I mentioned was part of what helped me be like, okay, you have this. Just maybe have to do it a little differently.
So this is for anyone who wants to answer. Are there any routines that you all established with either Taria managing your son's diabetes and Lisa and Scott, where it came to managing your diabetes, that you are going to maintain and carry over as we return to normal?
So for me, I started to cook breakfast more. I'm not really ashamed. I was gonna say I'm ashamed to say, but I'm not really. My kids were like the cereal, Pop Tart, frozen waffle kids, because we were hustle and bustle trying to get out of the house. So when things slowed down a little bit, I was able to take the time and cook more, like the sausage and eggs, and have fresh fruit, cut up fruit, and all of that, so they could still maybe have those frozen waffles, but adding other things. So that's something that I've been continuing, and I hope that I continue that, just kind of taking more time in the morning to give them a more well-rounded breakfast, because we've seen that helps Trace and his blood sugar starting out that morning. Like that, it helps his blood sugar through the day. He eats lunch at school so early; they eat lunch at 10:30, so it helps him, even just from that 2-hour difference from home to that lunchtime. It helps him. So that's my personal goal, is to continue to cook breakfast more. Um, Now that we've gone through crazy COVID time.
Lisa?
Well, I think modulating that breakfast actually intake for me in the other direction, right? So I think understanding that the days that I'm not hungry and I'm not moving as much, that I don't have to do it, right? I think it was so ingrained, being diagnosed, 25 years ago, that you have to have breakfast, you have to have lunch, you have to have dinner, right? I think that understanding, like I said, looking at the numbers and understanding, right? I'm a research person, I'm a data person. I like looking at, what's going on. So I think that set up a certain freedom for me to be like, okay, I'm not so frustrated because I'm having that morning spike that I always had. And it just actually makes my life easier. And the days that I'm hungry, I will have breakfast. But if not, I'm okay.
Okay, I think he's
Someone was going to make an appearance at some point. It was your dog, not mine.
It's crazy, right? And that's another thing, right? COVID has normalized dog interruptions, kid interruptions,
Yes.
and doorbells and
Everything.
everything. So thank you all for understanding. So did you all experience any issues with access to insulin or the tools that you all needed to make it through 2020 and now?
I was all set, thankfully. Thankfully I had always a little bit of a extra supply, and thankfully I never had any interruptions in that way.
Yeah,
same here for us.
Actually, supplies, I had problems getting certain, because the mail was moving much slower than it usually does. So anything that was mail order was way behind. So let's just say that I was sticking my finger again at a lot of points during during the process. So
Yeah.
I loved getting back to that. I really miss. So that was great.
So
Taria,
thankfully, I was gonna say, thankfully, I'm like Lisa. We didn't have any trouble, and we did have a pretty good backstock. I did panic at first because people were like, stock up on food, stock up on toilet paper, stock up on medicine. So I did go like refill everything that I was eligible to refill. Like, I'm getting nervous. I don't know how long this is gonna last. But we had enough, and when I refilled, we were fine. And then that's kind of one of the other good things about Trace being home with us. When he's at school, we have the nurse prick his finger a lot more. He has the Dexcom, but we still kind of want to get a better idea of where he is, because as you know, the CGMs can be off a little bit. When we're at home, because he's with us, we can trust that Dexcom a little bit easier. So we ended up not using as many test strips as we normally would when he was at school. So now we have a pretty good backstock of test strips. So that was kind of, some of the things we didn't use as many supplies because he's at home. He's at home as opposed to being at school. And at school, of course, we have to have double and triple stock in the nurse's office. So we were pretty good on supplies, thankfully. Thankfully.
That's good to hear because we've seen, Scott mentioned the shortage and the mail orders are running slow. So has anybody had experience with telehealth? And if you want to share what that actually
Yep.
felt like, so we'll go with Lisa, then Taria, and then we'll go with Scott.
Yeah, I have to appreciate my provider at Methodist Hospital here, Dr. Trisha D. Cub. She's amazing, and I'm very thankful that the system that they used wasn't as fun to set up, and we'll give them that. But they were actually always incredibly available. I would say, I'm more or less on a 4-month schedule with her, so I had my 4-month appointments. I think I had 3 of them more or less over video. I think the only snag that I hit, and it wasn't their fault, it was mine, or my technology, I guess. I couldn't download after a certain update from CareLink. I use a Medtronic pump. After a certain update, my operating system wasn't running the latest one, so I couldn't download my pump, which is kind of a big thing when you're managing with an insulin pump. So thankfully, by the time that issue sort of happened, I was able to. They were already starting to accept in-office visits. And I will say it was a very surreal experience to go back. I was like, I don't know. It felt strange, right? I was like, after a while, we're like, do I want to be in the hospital right now? But thankfully, the professional building is not where the main hospital piece is. But they were always available. They always answered questions via the online tool they have to communicate with the office. And you always hit snags, right? The audio fell off or something like that. But she's incredibly thorough, and everyone in her office is incredibly supportive and knowledgeable. So I at the very least didn't have a gap in care in terms of being able to reach my provider and all of that, right? They were there for me. So that was fantastic.
I agree with you, Lisa. We didn't have a gap in care either, and I'm so thankful for that. I actually was nervous at first because I didn't know if they were doing telehealth and trace
hospital pieces, but they were always available. They always answered questions via the online tool they have to communicate with the office. And you always hit snags, right? The audio fell off or something like that. But she's incredibly thorough, and everyone in her office is incredibly supportive and knowledgeable. So I at the very least didn't have a gap in care in terms of being able to reach my provider and all of that, right? They were there for me. So that was fantastic.
I agree with you, Lisa. We didn't have a gap in care either, and I'm so thankful for that. I actually was nervous at first because I didn't know if they were doing telehealth and Trace, when he was up on his 3-month appointment, I was getting nervous, like, oh my gosh, I don't want to miss an appointment, but are we going to have to go in there? And so when they said, they're doing telehealth, it was such a relief. And as you said, with the technology, I mean, that's just one of the bonuses to using technology. We use the Dexcom, as I said, in his office. His endo's office can get see all his data from the Clarity app. So we were able to discuss that. And according to Dexcom, the one thing was we couldn't actually do like an actual A1C. So according to Dexcom, it was like his A1C was great, and I was like, I'll take it. So, but the technology was great that they could give us feedback, and we didn't have to do anything different. But if any feedback we needed, if there was anything weird going on, we could call, they could pull that up. I could download from his Omnipod as well, all of his readings if they needed that. So I think COVID, it has shown us where, technology, especially with managing diabetes, can be amazing.
Yes. For me, I loved telemedicine, of course, because that helps me not leave the house and
Not
I
not
don't have
go
to go to the
anywhere.
doctor's office and I don't have to interact with people. So I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. The saddest thing is now it's coming to an end. They're like, you have to come into the office. And that's the sad thing. Now I'm not very emotional, but I mean, the tears may come if they're getting serious about this. I like the telemedicine. I think it's great. Uh, Someone might have to send me some tissues. Uh, I really like to stick to the current program if possible. I mean, if I got to go drop a little blood, but, you know, that's okay. But I like to stick to the telemedicine.
Scott is serious about not being bothered.
I
I
mean,
love it. I love
I
it.
mean,
I'll send you the pasta tissue, Scott. I will. I promise
let
you.
me tell you something. I'm sitting here laughing because he's sitting next to me, and it's so true. Like he is not lying at all.
So in at the beginning of 2020, so at the end of 2019, Tyrese and I started writing our book. My husband is Tyrese. So it launched in 2020, and we were already mostly me. I was already a part of the diabetes community. We also have a nonprofit foundation, so we were part of that, and I have connected with so many awesome moms and other people with type 1. Um, so I was kind of, I was in the community, but once we launched our book and we started to really get into talking about our story, because I think that really made us kind of come out of our comfort and really share how managing our son's type 1 has impacted us and kind of our journey. We've met so many more people and parents and families, and that just all happened in 2020. Like we met so many people. It's kind of like I always say, it's like a hidden world until you like type in or click in that one thing, and then it's like everywhere. Like you start all these people. So we've been able to connect with so many more people and so many more Black people as well. People that look like us or have kids that look like Trace with type 1. And that has been so awesome for us. And my husband has connected to other guys um, with type 1 or kids with type 1. So 2020 just really like, we just typed something special and it opened up a whole, new world for us. So it's been awesome.
What? So the world is starting to open back up again, and different states have different restrictions or do not have them at all. What were your initial thoughts when you heard that the vaccine was coming to your area? And we'll start with Lisa.
I was walking around with like a tank top, like here, whatever, just throw it. I was ready for it. I think I was after such a long year. I thought that was the first step towards normalcy, quote unquote, whatever that means. But I was. Please get me, ASAP. Let's do this. I'm ready. I was very excited about it for sure.
What about you, Taria?
I was nervous. I was nervous. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wait and let a bunch of other people get it first. And since I don't work outside of the home, I'm like, I'll just stay in the house if I need to. So I was very opposed and, just, I was not going to do it. I was very opposed. I wanted to do research because, I wanted to have an educated reason why I wasn't going to do it. But there's so much out there. Like you can find information to support your reason to do it. You can find information to support your reason not to. And so I was like, okay, I got to stop researching. Um, and yeah, I was opposed to it at first, but yeah, I did get my first shot.
Scott?
So for me, being in the Army for 24 years and being forced to whatever they poke in your arm, that's what you get. That's what we signed up for. No real say in what you get and what you don't get. And then working for the government again and kind of what they say is what you get. I was like, this time it's up to me whether I do or don't do it. So I kind of felt like, okay, now I have the power, right? For once in my life, I have the power whether I get this shot or don't get this shot. But I will tell you, it took me less than 72 hours to say, it's not about me. It has nothing to do with me. It's about everyone else and trying to get back to where they're supposed to be. So regardless of like, oh, okay, I have this power now, and I could say, no, I'm not going to get it. I went ahead and did it because in the end, it's not about me. It's about getting everybody else back to normal, and everybody else wants to go do things. Whether I want to stay in the house with no pants, that's up to me. But other people actually want to go outside. So, I got to do my part to get everybody else back outside. So that's why I made my decision to get it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I kept saying Lisa, and I had the microphone muted. So go ahead, Lisa.
No, I part of it too, I think, was what drove me more than anything to just say, let's get this over with. I live alone here, right? And I have friends that have been super supportive. I needed to feel comfortable enough to be able to do things normally or be able to go out there and, what if something happens to me? Who's going to take care of my dog? Or the fact that I wouldn't dare travel to Puerto Rico unless I was vaccinated and my family was vaccinated, right? Because there's such a huge risk there. So, I saw it as an opportunity, as just as Scott was saying, right? He's staying home pantsless, and I'm trying to get my suitcase in a plane. So, it was the way of me being able to feel comfortable with being outside my house.
Definitely, I definitely agree. So we have a few minutes left, and I want to go ahead and if anyone has any questions for the panelists, go ahead and post them, and we'll get them answered for you. While we're doing that, I do have a quick question for Taria. What made you overcome your fear or your reservations about getting the vaccine?
I actually was gonna say, what Lisa said, like who would take care of her dog. My husband, so he had decided he was gonna get it, and he needed to get it for his job. Um, so then he kind of had to talk some sense into me, like, this is a way for us to protect our kids. They can't get it. Um, I don't know even if I would if the kids could get it. I don't know if I would, but it's a way for us to protect them if something were to happen to us. Yes, we have like relatives, my mom, my sister, that could take care of them, but it would just be a lot more stressful. Even if we got sick, it would just be so much more stress that to have them go somewhere and someone else take care of them. So my husband, if he's listening, I will admit that he's the one that talks some sense into me. Um, just in that aspect, just something to do just to protect our kids and our family. And then we're hoping to, honestly, another thing too, we're just hoping to go on vacation this summer. We have a vacation plan, and we just we're excited to have a change of scenery and just do something outside of home in Indianapolis. So I was like, okay, that's the second bonus. I got to get it to go on vacation. So he talked some sense into me, and then vacation was like
It's right there.
the yeah, it's like the carrot dangling in front of my face.